Bam. Here we go. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to any of you out there in the internets and in the interwebs. I am Samuel Davis III, and these are my friends here: Gordon Chavez, Benji Kusar, how do you say it again, Benji?
Coursera.
Kusera,
Yeah.
Benji Kusera, and Robin Shin. We are some lost souls living in this world, trying to get in touch with each other and trying to find a better way of existing here on earth together. That's what we are doing. Today, we're having a different conversation today, and today's question that we have is what drives you? I'm going to jump right into this because the question itself is one of those questions that had me thinking about a lot of different things. What is it that drives me? So as I sat and I pondered this question, I wrote some notes down, and I just want to read a couple of them because these are things that drive me. Um, my oldest daughter is pregnant again, so that has been on my mind. Um, my future and my current financial abundance, that has been on my mind. Um, my home, my home has been on my mind. These are things that are driving me and making me say to myself, okay, I got to get this straight. My health, I got to get my health together. And these are things that I have been on my mind, in my mind, as far as what drives me, because I get up in the morning and these are things that are first thing on my mind. Man, my daughter's having another baby. Oh my goodness. Oh man, I got to get up and I got to make some money this way. Oh, I got this thing here going. I got this appointment here. These things relate with my future and current financial abundance situation that I'm working on. My home upgrades, I'm still in the process of doing an upgrade to my home. I think that I need a home base, and my home is my castle, literally. So with that being said, um, that's been a big thing. I've got my HELOC almost funded. We just had a walkthrough this weekend for my appraisal, and those are things that are on my mind. Those are things that drive me. They push me. They make me want to do things. They make me want to be a better person. And this podcast, surprisingly, has been sitting on the back of my head in the inner recesses of my mind. When I'm sitting back and I'm doing something, I'm like, dang, we got to go talk. We got a podcast coming up. What are we going to talk about? How am I going to talk about? What am I going to respond to this? What am I going to say based upon what we are talking about in our subject matter? So these and those are some, not all, but those are the things that are driving me right now. Um, a big thing that has always driven me previously that still sticks with me is my aspect of working in law enforcement. Um, I got into law enforcement because I literally and still to this day want to help people. I have always wanted to help people. I did not know to what capacity. I served in the military, and I think that I helped people then. Um, I worked in the base post office. That was something that really let me see who I am, what I do, and how I support and work with other individuals. And that's something that keeps me going as far as driving. It keeps me in the game. It keeps me mentally aware of what's going on with me. And it also gives me a good outlook on who I am as a person. Being that I'm married, um, it's not just about me and what drives me, it's about what drives us, my wife and I. We have conversations, we talk about different things, we get in our little zen area, which used to be our jacuzzi, and now we're moving into different areas in our house right now because we have my in-laws with us. But we had several areas that we used to work from or work at or sit in, just so we can get a feel and get a different outlook or a different perspective. We sit out by the trees, by the palm trees one day. One day we might sit by the pool side. The other day we might sit in the front of the house. These are things that drive. And I think that these driving things are things that are the foremost on your mind. I think when you got stuff on your mind, um, just like these subjects that I mentioned earlier, that's a driving force. that right there is a driving force for me. And physically, I have been looking at doing things with my body that I I envy some people, and I'll say envy because I'm gonna do a softball toss to Robin, because there was at one point in time when I was in law enforcement, I was doing a lot of heavy working out. We were working out team workouts and things. Robin was actually doing some MMA work, and I'll never forget. I sat back and I was like, "Dude, you actually out there fighting guys, going out and fighting. What is it that drove you?" And I'm asking this to you because I'm dropping this on you now, Robin. What is it that drove you, at least at that time, to get into working out and hang with these young kids? You got into a couple of tournaments, as I remember, as I recall. So, what is the driving force for you, and what drives you?
Well, when you talk about the question of what drives you, uh, when you addressed the question today, you had just this giant number of answers. And, you had your family, you had, you know, your financial situation, and you had all these different answers. But I think one of the best ways to answer this question is to keep asking the question and reframing the question. Because when there's a lot of answers, then it starts to make you think like, well, maybe there should be one overarching answer.
Hmm.
And today, when we start talking about this, I think we should examine the question more carefully rather than rush to answer. And often, in many um, esoteric kinds of things like this kind of a question, if you keep rephrasing the question and you keep asking the question over again, gradually the question becomes the answer.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. Okay, Shin. Wow, coming from up on the mountaintop, dropping that on us like
Well, I mean, we got four of us here. Let's everybody before we start rushing to answer the question, I think we should all ask and maybe give a statement of what does the question mean
Hmm.
to us? Because it means different things. You said it, your financial situation, that never crossed my mind as a driving force. Because why do you need to be financially abundant? You said your family, and then you said you have financial abundance. Well, why do you need to be financially abundant? Why is family even important? Uh, is that really the driving force? Is there something beneath that that really that makes those things matter, right? Because like if I'm training for a fight, I want to win, right? I want to get in there. I don't first of all I don't want to get my ass kicked, and I don't want to get hurt, and I want to win, and I want to look cool in front of my friends and all that kind of stuff. But why is any of that important? Why does winning matter so much? Why is winning some stupid tournament matter? It doesn't matter anymore. That was like 6 years ago. It doesn't fucking matter anymore. So why did it matter then? And why does it no longer matter now? And until I fully understand that, that's not really a driving force. That's some kind of thing that passes through your life, right? So I would love to hear from Benji and Gordon and yourself again. Also, what does this question fundamentally actually mean to each of us? And I think in that sense, we won't really need to answer the question because, like I said earlier, the question will become the answer.
oh. Okay. Well, let me toss this ball over to Gordon. Gordon, what do you think about what he said, and comment please.
Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, my internet seems a little unstable, but
We,
um,
we can hear you.
I like that. So when I first thought about the question, like for me, I want to feel accomplished, right? And
Mm,
and accomplished, right, can mean many different things, right? Um, I did think about my family. I felt I thought about me growing as an individual, and then also being able to contribute to my community, whether it's my family, extended family, and friends, or whether it's my neighborhood where I live or the city that I live in. Um, but I think feeling accomplished for me um, means that I'm growing, right? I'm doing things. I'm getting to different, I guess, levels of being better at whatever it is that that I'm working on. And sometimes that's me working on myself, maybe mentally, me working on myself spiritually, physically. That's something that I've often neglected, and I haven't worked on as hard as maybe working on myself mentally and spiritually. Um, and the idea is for me, the idea is to have those balanced, right? Um, if I work hard on one thing and I neglect another, then I don't have that balance, and I'm not even if I'm getting better at this at one of those aspects, I don't feel as accomplished. I think, and I think that's because I'm letting something else go. I'm not working on everything evenly, I guess. And then from there, the better I get at any of that, the more valuable I am, and the more I can contribute to my wife and my boys, the community, things like that. And so as I get better at those things, the then if I'm balanced, or if I'm doing both at the same time, working on myself and working on contributing to the community, um, I feel accomplished, and I feel like I'm making progress, I guess. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of what I thought of.
Okay, we're gonna try. We're gonna hit you up, Benji, and you tell me what it was. And I'm sorry if there was an echo. It might have been my microphone being on there at the same time. But
No, no worries, no worries.
yeah,
Uh,
go ahead, Benji. You go ahead and throw in what you see.
For me, because everybody always asks why are you so driven, right? That's the reason I put that question out. And really, for me, it was just really we talk about this, Samuel and I. It was a huge childhood trauma, right? My mom, my stepdad, everybody. I think every day since I got here to the United States, it's kind of like, hey, Benji, you dumb. Benji, you stupid. Benji, you're not worth it. And that's not an exaggeration. It was day after day, years after years. And that was the soundtrack of my life here in the United States. So that's why I was so driven, driven to achieve, to prove that I'm worthy and those things. That's kind of why I built my success. That's how I was able to didn't go to college and still build companies. That's how I was able to earn income and support multiple families when I want to, things like that. That's why I can do what I can do. So in some way it was a gift, not I didn't look at that way until the form. I realized that was the seed of the gift of my power. I always had the ability. I didn't have the grind, and that was the grind. So when things get tough, I was not willing to give up so that my mother said, "See, I told you you're gonna fail." Now, don't get me wrong, I failed multiple times, but I keep getting up. I think most people, especially my friends, know me throughout the year. They realize how much like I endure to do certain things in business and things like that. And being the children of color, you have to endure a lot of different things. But that's where the grind came from. That's where I learned how to like push through. And I remember from the first time I ran a marathon. Everybody say you hit that wall. Oh my gosh, that wall is for real. And you have to learn to push through that wall. And that was a physical thing, and things like that. That's the reason I asked that. Now, you know, that was done. That was younger me and not so much, not now. Now it's more about growth and healing and self-acceptance. That's something that's really my driving force. And ultimately living thing not live to live a legacy to my grandkids and kids. That's really come down to it, not the money. It's about that expression, that true expression of Benji, the art, the writing, and the drawing and things like that. That's the driving force.
Okay, so I see you similar to myself. You kind of throw in the family aspect. That's a driving force for you. That's
Yes.
for you for yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to incorporate kind of what Robin was saying, because I think he has a valid point that yeah, we can go in and list a lot of different things about what makes us do this or makes us do that. But Robin, if you can kind of go ahead and add a little bit more to that, as far as like with what you've heard us all say right now, is there a particular factor that you're looking for as far as what it is that makes us driven? Because that's something you went kind of ham on that. I just want to make sure we get that answered for you.
Well, again, it's not really an answer that I was looking for. It's a clarification of the question. Okay, for example, Gordon, a good question for you and for you, Benji, also is you listed a bunch of stuff. My question is, if those things were not in place, would you still be driven? Right? If I took that away from you, right? Let's say you're in my situation. For all three of you, you all listed family. I ain't got no family. I mean, I just got married. All I got is in-laws, and they're all doing better than me.
Yeah. But
They live in Europe. They're all set. They get socialism, or they all got good jobs and they got everything going for them. They don't need me. So
yeah.
if you didn't have family, and if you didn't have that sense of, Benji, when you talked about how you were growing up, and they said, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. So there was a sense of inadequacy, and that you wanted to move beyond that and to show that you were. What if that wasn't in place? I mean, when I grew up, it was the exact opposite circumstance. You're good enough. You're awesome. You're amazing. You're so smart. You're so smart. You don't even have to go to school. Dumbest fucking thing I was ever told by my parents, that I was too smart to go to school. Well, guess what? I didn't go to school.
Yeah.
Ended up being a grunt in the fucking Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And now I'm a security guard.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Yeah.
our journey is different, right? Our life
Yeah.
lesson was preparing us for something different, right?
Yeah.
So my journey. Now, let me be clear. My family are not my blood family. They are
Yeah.
my exes and things. I just adopt them. I have an adopted daughter, but let's be clear on that. Every one of us have a journey to go through. It's
Right.
kind of like every one of us have a purpose here in life, right? You came down here on this earth. You're going to do something, but you were not told, right? And so
Right.
these are a tool set that allow you to do certain things. This is back to, I'm going to line up a little bit on that. I remember I'm a Big Tennis guy, right? I love Andrew Agassi. Agassi was so talented, but he was not able to grind. And then at one point he fell off the wagon. He lost his confidence. He was playing like the circuits like the regular people to get confidence back. And that's when he learned the grind. He always had the gift, but he never had the grind. So things like that is like, okay, so is that a driving force or whatever it may be? When people ask me, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do all that? Why don't you want to watch TV? I had a neighbor say, well, what did you do fun this weekend? What do you mean fun this weekend? I code all the time. I love what I do. I write all the time. I sketch all. I don't need extra things like TV, movies, and things like that to be happy, right? I have a natural gift that I had to tune, right? So, like everything else, it's like even an artist, like a musician, you got to practice, and that was my practice in some way, right?
Well, like but we're still avoiding the question. The question is, if you didn't have those things, right? Like you actually said something interesting, because when we first asked the question, what drives you, you gave us a whole bunch of reasons, and then you just told us just now that you don't need any of those things,
But
right?
but
So
as
so
as a
that entire
human,
list, that entire list of stuff you just said, I don't need external stuff. I love doing what you see. What I'm saying. So
that
you
but that
listed a bunch of stuff and then
sure,
just told us just now that none of that. And same thing with you, Gordon. You gave us a list. My question is, if we took that list away, that list is satisfied. Everything's taken care of. Sam, your daughter is a millionaire. Your financial situation is set. You got 2 jacuzzis. one for Zen and the other for whatever else you do. You got everything taken care of. Hey, you want to call it Zen? That's fine. You know, uh, we have a name for it too. So, whatever you do, right? If that's all taken care of, question is, would you still be driven? And if so, why?
Gordon, you want to say something?
Yeah, go and go for it.
Gordon,
Sorry.
you're on mute.
Yeah, I know. I clicked it. It took a little while to kick in. Like I said, my internet's a little unstable right now. It looks like you guys are all paused, and my video's paused too. But you guys can hear me all right?
We can hear you.
Yeah. So I think, as I mentioned when I was sharing, is that for me it's being accomplished, and my circumstances have from as Benji mentioned, I was dropped in this world, and I had the life that I had, and between my circumstances and the decisions that I made, this is who I am and where I'm at, and these are the things that are valued to me right now. As if I was in a completely different life, and none of my current circumstances existed, I think it would still be accomplishment, and the accomplishments would depend on those circumstances, whatever, in some alternate reality or whatever. And so I think it's just, for me, the underlying is just growth and accomplishment, being better at whatever it is that I'm working on. Today, here, now, it's my family, my faith, and my community, and myself. If all of that stuff was taken care of, then I'd have a new set of, things that I had to work on, I guess. A lot of times I think about, have you guys ever seen the movie Powder? I think about that movie Powder, about this kid that was
Yeah. Yeah.
really, I don't know if he was a genius or whatever he was. It's been a while since I've seen it. But at the end of the movie, he ceases to exist. And I don't think they show what happened to him, but I feel like he got to a point where his soul maybe was too powerful for his physical body. So maybe he blew up or disintegrated. I don't know. And so I think that I don't necessarily want to blow up, maybe, but I think that as I grow, obviously the difficulty level, I guess, of the challenges that I will have will grow also, right? I won't have the challenges that I've overcome if I am the best possible husband in the world, then being a great husband might not be something that I'm working on at that point. If I'm the best possible dad, being a dad might not be something that I'm working on. If I'm, the best community member in our city here of Oceanside, then that might not be something that I'm working on. So for me, it's accomplishment and growth, and so that's kind of, I guess, my response to that.
So with you saying that, going back to what I was just kind of writing notes from what you said, Shin. Drive is, I put down the force to improve my standing. That's what drive is. So if I didn't have those things, there would be something in my mind that I'd be like, you know what, I need to fix this or I need to fix that. I think there's always, man's quest is always looking for more. And if those things weren't an issue, then sure, there would probably be something else, and I would have more drive to do something else. Um, I know first and foremost, protection and coverage for my family comes first and foremost, and I need a baseline, a house to live in, so that drives me there. If I don't have the money to pay it off or maintain it, then there's a problem. So that's a driving factor for me right there. There are things that if I had a house straight up and I didn't have to worry about paying it, or didn't have to worry about paying rent, or if I was a teenager, those things wouldn't be on my mind because I'd be living underneath mom and dad, and they would handle the bills. Drive is what takes me from here to there. And that's what I put into myself, and I put it on myself, and I carry it with me because it's something that's personal to me. So when you say what drive is it's something different than than where I'm at right now. It's something that I'm trying to attain. I'm not gonna say it's a difficult thing to attain, but it's a parameter. I'm focused on making six figures this year, and that's where I want to go. Next year, I want to try to press for seven figures. These are driving factors. Why am I doing that? Because this, and that. Drive. That's my comment on there. Anybody want to jump in on that?
Yeah. The next thing that comes up when you say that, again, we go back to the original answers that everybody gave, which was everybody gave a list, and now we realize, even if those things were satisfied, you would still be driven, right? I mean, we agree on that. So those aren't the real reasons. There's something else, something that wants to get you from A to B. So the next fundamental question is: there's a lot of people that have all those same things in place. They have family, they have financial concerns, they have a desire to be accomplished, and yet they are not driven. I mean, we know a lot of people in our lives who are not driven. I mean, you got those family members that you're just like, Jesus Christ, get off the couch, right? So I would like to get a view from everyone here. Why do you think some people are not driven? What are they missing? What do we have that what is it they don't have? And how can we give it to them? Because when we understand that answer, we can also learn to strengthen our own personal drive, right?
Well, my answer was the childhood drama, right? Mom say you're stupid. Mom say you're not worthy, right? So that was a driving force. I got that since I was a kid. So those were the driving force to prove that. But that was meant for me to learn. I could have fold like most people does. Sam and I talk about this. Sometimes there's a tough coach, and that just would run me ragged. But I knew he had good intention, right? So the difference is like I didn't realize that when I was a kid, that was the lesson for me to learn that, right? So you can say all you want. I got step kids right now that living in my garage have no drive but got talent. Is because we coddle them a lot, right? We don't teach them to fish. So that's the bottom line. As men, I got lucky. I had men that teach me how to fish, and take pride in fishing, and take pride in being able to take care of families and people and things like that. Where that like my step kids grew up in this culture where that let's live off somebody, let's live off the girlfriend, let's go live off of this. I would be embarrassed if I can't take care of my queen. Are you out of your freaking mind? Like, what kind of man are you, right? So this is the lesson I gave my granddaughter Brooklyn. I said, Brooklyn, if that man can support you, can be the king that you're supposed to be for you, what's your point? The physical stuff will go away. You're 25. Wait till he turns 50 and 60. And her ex, I'm like, he's only 26 years old. Look at him. He's already gained weight and stuff. So these are things that's what drive us to be better, right? I'm not talking about just as a physical human being, but your soul got to grow through all these too, right? All this trauma and all this thing. You can take the negative and you can take the positive. Thank you for that lesson, Samuel. I took that keenly because part of my mindset is not only create from the place of joy. Before it came from a place of fear because I'm not worthy. Now it's from a place of joy. I'm worthy. Now, how do I create from that space? Right? That's really come down to. Gordon?
So it sounds like what you're saying is that some of these people who don't have drive, it's because they were not taught and coached to have drive. Is that what you're saying?
I think in some way, yes. But they're also responsible to create that as well too. So there's certain things like like they were taught in the environments like it's okay to be okay, and for me it wasn't. I grew up from an extraordinary my birth father was extraordinary, and I got that base from very, very early on. So that was really important to me, to be extraordinary. Things like that came from my birth father. You know, a lot of these kids that, like, especially I took care of these kids like for a long, long time, and what they were taught was just to be okay. It was, this thing about like everybody win a trophy kind of thing. This conversation to me is like, you're not allowing your son to fail, and so he's never going to grow. So it's no different than like when you train for MMA, right? It's like, I know when I first played tennis and stuff like that, I really sucked for years and years until I got really, really good. I played tournaments, I win tournaments, and same thing with other sport that I into. The very few things that in my life I caught on immediately, except for programming. It was a natural thing for me, but yet I still had to learn to really harness that skill, ability to do computer work, right? So no different than that.
I think that it seems to me like, in particular, you mentioned your computer skills. There are certain things that everybody has something that
Hmm.
attracts them. That whatever it is, there's that driving thing. I want to be better at it. Whether it's sitting down watching Netflix, I want to watch all the Netflix series or whatever, or I want to draw some draw some art, or I want to focus on rolling cigarettes, or you know jogging at the beach. It everybody has that one thing that might catch them. There might be something that will hit you, all of a sudden you go, hey, wow, he's roller skating, man. I wish I could do that. How did he do that? So there are things, everybody gets attracted by something different. There are certain um life circumstances you'll see certain things. My father, he coached the all Marine basketball team, and I hung around a bunch of Marines and I would watch them play, and I'd see how he handled each individual guy. This guy was having problems doing his free throws, how my father approached him, and how the team supported him, and I watched and I looked at how they did that. There are things that I saw him as he worked in the my father did other things in the Marine Corps that I watched, and I watched him handle other individuals. So he was a master gunny sergeant, and I saw him lead. I literally saw my father lead, and there are things about it that I liked and I admired about it, and then there are things about it I was like, I do not want to do that. Oh, I'm glad I'm not that guy for that. No, and it's also one of the main factors for me personally why I went to the Air Force versus the Marine Corps. There were certain things that I saw that I was like, yeah, that's not me, and I don't care for it. I think that life circumstances brings things out, and that thing that says I want to do that, that's that drive that I think that we're talking about, because yeah, drive can be a lot of different things, but it separates us from those other individuals, or it separates us. And I'm going to say this because I thought about this story earlier, or parable that I heard. It was two brothers. Um, one of them was a seriously bad alcoholic, and the other one was a successful businessman. And when the when they had both of them together, someone was interviewing them both and asked, "Hey, what's your story?" He goes, "Hey, Dad used to drink so much, and I knew that I was going to be a drinker too, so I just started drinking, at an early age, and now I'm an alcoholic, and this is the way I am." And the other brother goes, "Well, I saw what Dad did, and I never wanted to do that. So I did the exact opposite of that, and I worked this way." And I think as everybody's story is that same way. I see things that my brothers or my sister have done, and I said I didn't want to do, and I made that conscious decision not to do that. I made that conscious decision out of my family of four at the time. I was the first one to leave the house. I made that decision for myself. And those are things that I think each of us, depending on what's going on in our lives, that's what pushes us to do those things. So, any comments on that?
Yeah, I can share a little bit. I really like, for example, first of all, I should say I guess the direction, right? Because there's always the direction of the conversation, because there's always been, some people that have reached different levels of success in whatever area they have their success in. And then there's been folks that we all know that have great potential, but are not reaching those levels of success. And so, and I really like the way you did that, Shan, because that has always, I have always noticed that. I've always noticed that, you know, some people are willing to I guess work, even though work not necessarily in the traditional sense, because when you say the word work to, I guess, to people of our generation and older, you think of physical exertion. You think of going out and say having a job where you sweat and you actually do something physically. You come home and you're exhausted, and that was work. And like, you know, prior to that, you know, my dad and my uncles all say, "Oh no, you know, the graphic design stuff, that's not work, right?" And so, I think the definition of work is more in a holistic sense, maybe, you know, as far as mind, body, and spirit, because I think that as human beings, we are willing to work for those things that are really important to us. Unfortunately, from my perspective and, you know, what I've seen in others, some people, it almost seems like there's nothing that's important to them, right? Because they're not truly, you know, I guess working, whether it's working on yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, they're not doing the things that need to be done to accomplish whatever, I guess, we deem successful, right? And so it's a lot of that has to depend on the definitions of all these words, right? The definition of success can mean one thing to me and something very different to somebody else. And so, but I think that we, going back to why, I think that there's something, I can't explain it, but there's something in us that will cause us to say, I'm going to actually do whatever it takes to do to get this thing. If I'm trying to get a degree, I'm going to put in the hours and go to school and do that. If I need to you know, to be, you know, if I want to be the greatest surfer in the world, that I'm going to go out in the ocean every day and I'm going to get out there and do the best I can. And so it takes work, time, investment. I don't know how to describe it. But the question, I guess, is what triggers somebody to, instead of saying, yeah, I think surfing is cool, but I'm just going to sit here on the sofa all day, to actually getting up early, going out there, getting in that cold water, you know, investing in a surfboard, a wetsuit, whatever it is, and putting in hours, getting out of your comfort zone. Like me, for example, I'd be scared of what kind of sharks I might run into. Who knows, right? But there's something in human beings, I think, that says, yes, I'm willing to go and do whatever it takes to accomplish what I want to accomplish. Or I might say that I really like that, and I might say that really interests me, but yet the actions aren't there. I guess I don't know if that makes sense.
Let me jump in real quick because I want to say this. I think that all of us here, I think we all have a somewhat, I would say, spiritual life. Would you all come to agree with that? That we're more than just human beings. We are spirit beings as well. Can we all agree to that? Okay. So I think that when a person says, um, if you have any type of a relationship with that higher power, whatever it is that you call on, I think that if whatever that spirit is, that whatever that thing is that you put above you, that you answer to, you call out to, I think that if you have a relationship with that thing and understand that there is something higher than you, that you are automatically understand. I'm not gonna say automatically because some people don't, but I think you have an understanding that there is something more in this world that is more than just me. It's more than just who I am, and I want to contribute to it, whatever it may be. And I think that's part of that drive. When you sit back there and I acknowledge that I have a higher power, my higher power tells me that there are other individuals just like me who have this understanding of this higher power. We should connect. We should get to know each other. We should be able to talk and we should be able to relate and have conversations like this. High minded conversations that we generally don't. Some of these higher powers, they require that you do catechism, or some of those higher powers require that you go out and do certain things. Other ones don't necessarily ask for that, and I'll say that with Baha'i, they don't meet up on weekends for church services, and they don't believe in necessarily reaching your pocket and tithing. I haven't got to the aspect yet, but there are certain things that each religion offers, and I'm just saying is a higher power. I think that we all have a relation or have an idea of a higher power being above us, and that understanding of that is what always keeps us in our mindset for a drive. Because if I have a real true understanding or relationship with this higher power, and I'm really studying and understanding this higher power, the higher power is telling me to go out and help other people, gather my flock, go talk to these individuals, or do whatever. So that's that inner drive, that inner man inside of me that's going, hey, I'm not doing enough. I could be doing more. Maybe I'm being lazy and just staying around the house eating crackers and watching Netflix all day, or whatever. And I know in the back of my mind, I'm like, I gotta do things. I gotta do things. Because there's a higher calling upon my spirit. And that's why I say, I think that we all have the understanding of a spirit being in each of us. It's just tapping into that. And if you have that relationship with the higher being, boom, it's going to come. It's going to come. And that's just me now. That's just my thought process on it. But I think that's part of that drive that you get. I think, Shin, we talked about the parables last time that, that Zen Buddhism talks about, or is that it was, or Zen they talk about parables and how they relate with things, and how, they don't necessarily preach, but the preaching is in the story or the parable, or just like Aesop's tales and Aesop's fables or whatever. The story for your higher minded thinking is in the parable that you've heard, that is not necessarily scripture or scriptural, but it's something to give you an idea of what I'm doing with my life could be better if I do this based upon the parable that I heard, if that makes sense. Comments, complaints?
No, it does. It does. And by the way, you say Netflix twice. I want Netflix to sponsor us next time.
What's that?
You said Netflix twice. I'm like, I want Netflix to sponsor us next time. Hey, Netflix, that's 4 times now. Netflix 5.
Netflix, you owe us for 3 clicks.
Yeah. Either that or we'll get sued for copyright infringement.
Well, I would like to address that. I do have one of the things it was crossing my mind, especially Gordon, when you talked about surfing, and Benji when you talked about tennis. Those are inherently enjoyable activities. But one of the things about drive, and what separates, I guess, the men from the boys, it's to use a phrase, is, are you willing to do those things that are not fun and not enjoyable in order to achieve some higher goal? Like financial is the easiest example is financial, right? Don't go out to eat, don't go to Starbucks, save your money in order to achieve higher financial success. And I think when I started thinking about Benji, when you talked about, you have some kids around you that are not driven, and we all have people like that around us. I've got lots of people around me that are not driven, but some of them are driven about some things, and some of them are not driven about anything, or they're at least not driven about anything that I think is important. Who am I to say, right? And I think one of the things I've thought about was, to what extent are you willing to do something that you think is completely not going to get you anywhere? Right? So, for example, I think one of the driving forces might be a certain level of confidence in the possibility of success. Right? Because if Sam, you said, I'm sitting here watching Netflix, that's what, 6 times? And there's there's something in the back of your mind that says you need to get up off the couch and go get something done, right? What if someone came along and said, yeah, you could go out and do that, but it won't do anybody any good. It won't do you any good. It's not going to work out. Whatever it is that you think you got to get up and do, like, go clean the pool. And like, as soon as you clean the pool's going to be filthy. It's not going to work, right? Whatever it is you do. You know, Gordon, you want to go out there and surfing does not a good example because surfing, like I said, is inherently enjoyable. But like, you want to go out, like do your homework, you're going to college and just practice your math or practice, none of that's fun, right? How much time and energy are you willing to invest in something that is not fun, not enjoyable, in order to achieve some higher goal? And the key difference here is that there are some people who don't believe that the goal will be achieved, despite the fact they're putting that effort. And I can use myself as an example. I'm driven to do a lot of things, but as I've mentioned many times over and over, and you can tell that I have an issue with this, is financial stability for the future, retirement. And you can say, okay, Robin, you need to do this with your money, do this with your money, do this with your money. And there is some goddamn voice in the back of my head that keeps telling me, you can do all that all you want, but you're still not going to be rich. Right? And there's something that's telling me, like, it's too late, don't bother now. When I was young, it's too early, you don't have to now. And then I'm older, it's too late, you can do it now, and it's not going to do you any good. Right? There's something that's blocking me from being driven in a way, because we can talk about all the things that I'm driven to do, right? Working out and practicing things and getting, as Gordon would say, accomplished in certain things. There are things in my life that I know I should do, and for some reason I cannot find the drive to do it. And I suspect it's a lack of confidence in that those actions are actually going to get me from A to B. Right? I want to, like Sam, you said, I'm driven to go from A to B. And there is something in all the things that I'm not driven in, because I don't want to sit there and go, I'm so driven and this young generation, they suck. I'm not driven about everything. I've got my flaws. And I have to examine those things and go, why am I not driven in those areas? And I suspect, and I don't have the answer, but I suspect that I don't really believe this is going to do any good.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think that in my experience, I have always valued the idea of having a mentor, right? And so I've always wanted to learn from somebody else that maybe has been, well, and you know what? And I go back, I wouldn't say always, because there was a time where I wasn't working on things that I'm working on now. And so there was a time where I didn't work on finance, and I was in really bad financial shape, and to be completely honest, I didn't care that much. Money just wasn't something that I valued, right? And I'm not saying that I value it now. I just have a different outlook, and I'm like, money is a tool that's going to get me those things that I really value now. But that said, I've gotten to a point where I highly value the idea of having a mentor, because what a mentor does, in my experience, is that a mentor will tell you to do things, and it can be a YouTube mentor, Instagram mentor, or somebody but you don't always have to know that person. That person doesn't have to know that they're mentoring you, right? You're just learning from somebody else that has accomplished something that you want to accomplish. And for me, that has been a big thing, because my mentor, who luckily I do know, I have a great relationship with, has asked me or told me or whatever to do certain things that, as Shen would say, I've never thought about doing, or I've thought about doing, but I didn't believe that they're really going to get me to where I wanted to be. Or I thought that, those that were where I want to go, there was something special about them, and that I could never get there. And so there was, some, I guess, sense of being less worthy, lack of self-worth maybe. But really, it's just a matter of, I think, taking a leap, even when you don't necessarily believe that thing that you're doing is going to get you where you want to be, based on your faith in somebody else, because they genuinely want to help you, and they know where you are, they've been where you are, and they knew the jumps that they had to take to get to where they are, and they're saying, look, this is what you got to do. And so But that lack of belief, I'm with you, Shen. I believe it because we won't do things that we don't believe are going to get us to where we want to be if we don't believe that they're going to actually get us to where we want to be, if that makes sense. And so I think part of it is belief. You have to believe that these steps that you're taking, no matter how minuscule they might seem sometimes, or how hard and how out of your comfort zone they're going to be, they're going to get you to where you want to be. And then also knowing where you want to be. You know, you mentioned the steps for financial security, and then you said, but I don't think they're going to get me rich. And so then the question would be, well, let's analyze, what does rich mean, and what does rich mean to you? And so that's what I do with myself. I'm like, you know, where do I want to be? Do I want to be this? Do I want to be that? Do I want to reach this level? Do I want to reach that level? And when it comes to financial goals, reaching financial goals, I think what made a change in me to actually start to make finance important in my life was that was believing that more money was going to make me more of what I already am, versus the idea that money changes people. And so I've always been, at least I would say, I've always been a very generous person, even when I didn't have much to give. And now that I can do more, you know, I've got accounts for all 4 of my boys so that they can retire. And, you know, half of them haven't even started working yet. And so I think belief, I think you're on point when you say belief, Shen. I agree with you 100% on the belief part. And I don't necessarily know, other than just taking a leap on faith, because, you know, somebody, you read it in a book, saw it in a video, or somebody told you face to face, this is what you got to do. That's the only other thing that I can think of, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And let me add on that quickly. I only have maybe 2 or 3 successful company, 2 major one and a few other ones. I fail at thousands of other companies, and I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay, but this is where my drive and grind come from. I keep getting up. I keep getting up. The first 10 years of my business, I literally crawl. I live on somebody's couches. I live in hotels, and I eat ramen noodles. Okay, that's what it comes down to. I love ramen noodles, but I got sick of it after a while. You know, the instant one in the thing that you just put water in there and you nuke it. That's what I live on for a long, long time. I'm not a big person, so I don't eat very much. But remember, it take a lot of that trial and error to be successful, right? Every one of us that way. Bill Gates only got a few success, really. You know, he didn't like program anything. He bought DOS for 10 grand, and that thing made him $2 billion. That's crazy, right? Kentucky Fried Chicken. The gentleman that started Kentucky Fried Chicken failed until he was 62 years old. He started KFC at 62. So all is possible. You know, those are things that you got to understand. And like, you know, I launched my 3rd company now. I'm terrified, right? Because I just sunk like 80 plus thousand into this thing in the recession, right? So, but that's just part of what Gordon was mentioning. You have to have leap of faith. Now, I'm not sure how the outcome is going to be, but what I can control is my effort. What I can't control is the outcome. As long as I do everything every day and keep thriving and thriving, and when I fail, I get up. When I fail, I get up. Which lately I fail a lot because I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and also I'm terrified of the new path. You know, this is new AI stuff, even for me, right? So that's what drives me. You know, that's the point of that. Okay.
Wow. Shen, you got something?
Yeah, you know, these are all Instagram memes. We didn't have to have this meeting to arrive at this conclusion. I can just scroll through Instagram and look at Michael Jordan quotes and Denzel Washington and, you know, fall down 6 times, get up 7. But the big thing that I think we've started to realize is that there's a sense of faith, right? You know, Benji, you have faith that if you keep getting up and you keep walking forward, that you will succeed. Right? You have this faith, and that if you keep doing it, I want to go into something a little bit deeper and to ask, you know, when you see some kid on a couch who just won't get up, where does his lack of faith come from? Right? Why do we have faith and he doesn't? Right? That's the big question. And Gordon, you touched on it in a sense of a mentorship. But I want to get beyond, like I said, YouTube Shorts and
Sure,
Instagram memes, and say
sure,
where's your lack of faith come from?
sure. I'll answer. This is what I have. I have faith, right? So when I was in Asia, especially in the jungle, I moved to the jungle with my grandparents. There was so many animal creatures there. I've gone through different things, and one of the things was I was in this trail to go to my aunt house, and everybody saw except for me. There was a wild pack of dogs. This dog picked me up. They thought I was a goner. Nothing happened to me, not even a scratch. He just let me go. Okay. I'm climbing this mango tree. Put my hand in a full jar of like bees, whatever it is. Nothing happened to me. Again, climbing, fell off on my head. Nothing happened. So the faith is I'm here for a reason. I survived for a reason. You know? You know, and the other thing, I'm running, I was fast running when I was a kid. I run. And there's a train track like literally across from where I'm running. Everybody in the village thought I would be dead. For some reason, I just stopped. I was supposed to be here, you know. And I try so hard to let go of my life. Last few years, I'm still here. You know, things like that. So it gave me this thing. It's like, my best friend gave me on my birthday, have faith. And that's been my key point. I always knew that if I hear correctly the whisper in my head, if I follow it, when I follow it, things work out in the right way. When I go against that, my whisper, I go against I go for the ego, success, country club life, and all that, things went sideways. But the thing is, because of I went through what I went through, I have faith because I'm still here. My stepson been in like 4 car accident, completely tore up the car. Nothing, no scratch. He's supposed to be here. I sent him to the forum. Yeah. So he's one of those talented kids that underachieve. And this is where that is difficult. I when we talk about being ready, when he's ready to go to another workshop, I will provide that. I send his mother to these workshops as well too. So for me, it's not so much tough love. It's like when they're ready to come, they're gonna go to these workshops. Brooklyn is the same way. So these are things that will help them drive it, but they have to feel the pain first. That's the whole point. Like when I like put my hand in that bee, oh my, the pain was there instantly. Because it was brutal, right? And when the dog bit me, I'll be honest with you, I blacked out because it was a big dog just picked me up like this, and then they thought that they're going to take me into the forest, and he just dropped me. So there you go.
Well, why do you think those near-death experiences affected you one way, and those near-death experiences did not affect your stepson in the same way?
That's a good point. I think that's where that I'm still kind of navigate through that part, and I know that he understand that. He totally get that too, and his family is extremely sensitive, so they can hear things a lot better than I can. Like his mother can hear like she wrote this book that was given to her, like literally came into her brain, and she just typed the whole book out in like 3 weeks. I get words and like paragraph, not paragraph, but like sentence of things of what my direction is. But I think they just fear that connection. I think they fear that connection a lot. I'm not quite clear what happened to them because I wasn't there, but they fear that connection to the universe and God, right? And I wasn't. I grew up in the temple. I love being connected to God. I love being in the meditation. Even to this day. I mean, it's like, to me, it doesn't matter which temple I go to. I'll go to the Baptist church here, in my town. I have no problem with that. I'm here for God, not for the people that's gonna, ridicule me and all that. I'm here to hear what He has to give me. I told you I went to Joel Olson. It's not about Joel Olson. It's whatever mechanism God is pushing the whisper into my ear. I'm good with it. I don't care who the vessel is.
I think to me it seems like mentors is a big thing. I think everybody has their own story, and you can't quantify this person's story and mix it with this, because I got things going on in my life that made me who I am, and made me lean towards this or see this, or make me see that, you know, girls are really on my mind versus a guy who's homosexual and he's attracted to men. I can't call what it is that makes those things happen. I just know that as a person who has a belief in God, that this spirit that has come down, that whole mentorship thing, that's part of who I am. That's part of me, and for me, it's about going out and teaching each one, teach one. That's kind of the approach that I take for that, and I take that very seriously. When someone comes up and they ask a question about something, I feel like it's my job, if I know it, to share it. If not, direct them and tell them where to go. But I don't I don't think that you can't put the question to everybody's different because of their life circumstances, and I just think that having conversations like this with other individuals who can sit back there and take that subject and apply it to them lives and say, well, yeah, I have a Christ in me that's made me see this, or Buddha has allowed me to see this, or this
Hmm.
experience, this near life experience, has allowed me to see this, and now I'm right now. Now that I've seen it, I'm good to go. So I think we
Hmm.
all have our own ways that we can pull things from it. But again, I think that mentorship is just like being a parent. It's something that you learn. I want to say this real quick because I remember at one point, Shim, you were saying something, and I was saying something that when you said one thing and it was like negative attitudes. Some people just carry negative attitudes. Period. Trust me on that one. Working in a prison, I see it all the time. There are guys that come in with bad attitudes, and there's nothing that you can do. I've been working with this guy for the last 5-6 years of his sentence, and he gets transferred somewhere else out, and he takes that bad attitude wherever he goes at, and then next thing I know, this guy got stabbed, over at the next facility, and I'm like, hey, I try to talk to the guy. I try to say what's going on and throw positive things to a person. I tried. But if a person doesn't do it, doesn't accept it, it's not necessarily on me. But I being someone who has received and understand that there is a higher spirit than me, and that I'm out here to teach it and spread it out there, that's my job, to kind of stand there in the middle and say, hey, if I see somebody needs some help, I'm gonna give them a little bit. And if not, sometimes you gotta let people go. Sometimes you gotta let them fall. Like I think Benji mentioned it earlier. You gotta let them fall. And Gordon, you got 3 sons. I got 3 daughters. When you get 3 of a particular sex, or excuse me, 4, when you have 3 girls, 4 boys, you kind of have an idea of what boys are like or what girls are like, or what they do and what they don't like, what works and what doesn't work, and you take those things and you apply them. There are certain things that I experienced that were negative, that if I were to tell you these things, you go like, wow, and you still feel this way about that. It's because I took the negative out of it and I turned it around for me. And everyone's different on that. So I don't want to kind of go anymore. I just want to kind of let this go. But anybody else have any comments on that?
Totally agree. I realized mentorship is right. It was my grandfather. That was my mentor. I just didn't think of him in that way because I always thought he was my grandfather. But you are absolutely right. He was a great mentor to me.
saying that, Shin, who was there someone in your life that you looked up to that you would say mentored you outside of a drill instructor at MCRD? I mean, was there someone that you looked at when you were growing up that you say, hey, you know, this one guy, now that you mention it, this one guy when I was in the 7th grade, you know, or whatever. Is there anybody for you?
Um, Not really in that sense, and I'm not saying that mentorship doesn't work. I'm actually confirming that it's an affirmation. I lacked mentorship, and as the result, I lacked direction and was not very driven. A lot of people see me as being pretty accomplished. Well, that's because I lived in a society where there was a lot, you know, everybody, the bar, the what was considered average was higher than what you consider in the United States. I mean, there's no question. You know, you go to an Asian school, the bar is higher. That's you know, everybody has to learn math, everybody has to learn how to read, and you just don't graduate unless you're good at that shit. But I was still the bottom of my class, right? But the bottom of a class in an Asian school, when you come to America, they're like, holy shit, you know, you're pretty good. And it's like, I was out the, you know, so in spite of the fact that I appeared accomplished to a lot of people, I was still what Benji would call an underachiever because I was not achieving what was the average for my community, right? It was below average. And that lasted for a very long time, decades and decades. And I actually believe sincerely that it was not really until I went to Avatar that I got my head out of my ass.
Whoa,
Right?
Robin,
I
really?
mean, it was that late. I was just drifting along, doing, I was not thriving. I was surviving. And because I was given some education, like every time I went into something, like I didn't go to college when first of all, I didn't graduate from high school, and then I didn't go to college because I didn't think I could make it through the math classes. And even though I was better at math than everybody else, but because I came from I came from a class that was considered, I was considered below average in math in the class that I was when I did attend class. I said, I'll never make it through the math. I didn't know that in America you didn't have to take math in college. that shit was optional. It never occurred to me, right? And then finally, when I did go to college, I majored in physics, which is pretty much just applied math, an applied math degree. And but that was not until much later in life, after I went to the Marine Corps and came out of the Marine Corps, and then I was married to this woman who said, "Oh, just take the class and just give it a shot." And I inched forward. I would not consider that a success. I consider that just barely making it. And then it was not until Avatar where I was forced to really take a serious, deep look at myself. And it could be Avatar, it could be Landmark, whatever. Until I really started taking a deep look at myself, I really didn't have anybody. And now, of course, I read the memes and I see people like Benji who say, you know what, you can make money and getting around. But I mean, it proves the point. Lack of mentorship means that you just kind of drift through life on a boat with no rudder. And just because you didn't drown doesn't mean you're successful, right? That I got the participation prize, right? I got the participation trophy, which is I didn't go to jail. Well, you ain't supposed to go to jail, moron. Right? So that proves the point. I agree 100%.
I just want to say for brevity's sake, because we just hit our hour time frame, but I just wanted to say, one thing that I definitely learned, and again, you're going to hear me say it over and over again, working in prison, a lot of men and women, they have never been given structure in their life. And if you've never been given structure, because that's what correctional officers do. We try to correct those things and we try to give them structure. Get them up at a certain time, give them lunch at a certain time, got breakfast at a certain, getting your mail calls, certain things, we give them structure. And you recognize some people, you come in and it sounds funny, but some of these guys will come in during their 5-10 year sentence, whatever they got, and while I'm working with them, you see the growth. You literally see the growth of some of these guys. You start making recommendations for guys to start going to take an ESL class, or go to church on Sunday, or start going to recreation, when we do it, and you start giving them structure. Whereas when they're on the streets just running wild in their own mind, they are going to go crazy. They're going to fail. They don't know, because a lot of times they don't even realize that they actually have something psychologically wrong with them, physiologically wrong with them. They're not even understanding what's going on in their lives. And sometimes, that was my job, to sit back there and to observe and say, hey, I see what's going on with this guy here. He barely speaks English, but you know what? He's a good cook. So I send him down to work food service. Then I tell him to take an English class on the weekends, and give him some structure. And it's just that sometimes you got to batten down the hatches. You got to lock in, and you got to sit down, just like you mentioned, Shin. You got to sit down and look at yourself sometimes, and take a serious look at yourself. Sometimes that takes digging deep into your pockets and going through a course and learning something on a course, or you can have conversations like this. You can have thoughts. You can have all kinds of things going on in your head, and you can listen to these podcasts. You can listen to other individuals who have went a certain way, and that's the essence of it right there. That's the essence of it. I just want to say, anybody have any questions on that or comments on that before we get ready to shut this down?
Completely agree. Structure.
Well, anybody want to close? You want to do a round robin before we go, or we want to just shut it down right here, guys? 'Cause I don't know what your time is like, and we never really have discussed what we're going to do when we go overtime. But I just said we had set from 3 to 4, and here it is about 11 after. But I just wanted to, conversations can get going longer. Sometimes they do like that, because of the conversation, the way it goes. We carry on, but I will shut it off from here unless anyone else has a conversation or something else they want to add to the to this conversation that we've had. Okay. All right, guys. Well, we'll close it all, and next week we'll figure out what we're going to do, find the next time, the next conversation, next subject matter. This was a good one, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace.